Well, good evening, everybody. I'll start by saying Om Shanti, because that is the greeting we use as the Brahma Kumaris. And it's very significant because translated, it means Om, I the soul, Shanti, am a being of peace. Peace is my nature. So if we're really peaceful, then we're not going to experience stress, distress, upsets, and so forth. So obviously, within the Brahma Kumaris, this is the foundation of the way we approach spirituality. We start by looking at how we're thinking and why we're thinking that way. And we work our way towards becoming that very peaceful soul. So it's really important to look at the connection between our mind and our body, because every negative thought is absorbed by the body. Every negative thought also produces vibrations and spreads its vibrations out into our environment, which means when we have a negative thought, that not only causes us harm, but actually it causes harm to all those around us and actually impregnates our environment. So it's a very powerful thing to start looking at. How and why do we think negatively? And how can we learn to think positively? It's an old saying that you cannot change old problems with old solutions. And this looking at how we think is quite a new way of approaching spirituality. But the medical profession is very aware that when we have negative issues around us, we're likely to not only become ill, but if we're already ill, we're going to make that illness worse. So it's absolutely key that we learn how to change our thinking and think differently. And that sounds very easy, but of course it takes practice and it takes a bit of learning and understanding of what's going on. So we teach positive thinking in a 4-week course, and each week we study one aspect of how we think and how we can change our thoughts. I'm not going to do the course here tonight, obviously, but I am going to talk a little bit about it and why we need to change our thinking. If you think about it, our negative thoughts are at the base of all our problems. So we tend to think that our problems are what are happening around us, what are happening to us, and the people around us, the situations around us, and the circumstances and so forth. But in actual fact, that's not so. That's an illusion. The source of our problems is how we respond to that, what our awareness is and what our consciousness is. So take a very simple example. If it's very, very warm in this country, sun is shining first thing in the morning, we're all anxious to get outside and enjoy that wonderful sunshine. And if the following day it's pouring with rain and there's a thunderstorm and it's windy and it's cold, we do the reverse. We go in and we complain and we moan about the weather. And if we happen to live in the Sahara, we do the opposite. We've been rushing out and enjoying that rain. And I think in India, there have been occasions during the monsoon where people have done exactly that. They rushed outside and soaked up all this wonderful cooling rain. Yes, in countries that are very hot, obviously, the last thing they want is more and more heat when they hope to have some rain. So as you can see, that's an example of how it's not the circumstance that we are, that is creating our negativity. It's how we approach it and how we understand it. Now that applies to many, many situations. So the root causes of our negative thoughts tend to be dependent on things like our desires not being fulfilled, our expectations not coming into fruition. We get disappointed. We feel things are going badly. We may have many things happening around us which we don't expect. And because we're not prepared for them and then they're not making us feel comfortable, that's how we think. We take on that stress, we take on that distress. And the more we think that way, the more it increases. So if I become stressed and distressed and I'm living with my family are going to experience the same stress and distress as it comes from me. They, in their turn, will then become stressed or distressed. And so the whole thing multiplies. The environment becomes stressful. And we all become very irritable with each other. Our relationships become very poor. And we end up not making very good decisions because all we can see is what to us is going wrong. If we turn it round the other way, and if we actually recognize that what is happening in life is always going to happen, whatever we do, we might just as well get on and enjoy it. So if I look at a situation, whatever it is, the only thing I know about it is that nothing stands still in this life. Life changes every day, every moment of every day. And certainly within a few days, that weather may change again, the circumstances may change again. And whatever the problem was, if we allow it to, may flow by. If it doesn't, well, okay, we will have got used to it. We will have got to see it differently. We might have learned even to stand back and observe it. And as we learn to stand back and observe it, we also learn how to find solutions. So this is the kind of thing that we teach in positive thinking. We teach people to recognize what the influences are. And if you think about the word influence itself, it means coming in, flowing into us. So if we allow negativity to flow into us, we're bound to feel negative. Whereas if we actually learn not to accept it, then we have the opportunity to be positive. So it's actually recognizing what's coming towards us, where it's coming from, and why it's coming at us. Learning to understand, that means standing back from it. And if we can stand back from it, we make a better judgment. At the same time, we give ourselves space to think. And when we have that time to think and recognize that this doesn't last forever, it's going to go, it's going to pass by. And in a few days, a few weeks, it may be even a few months, things will be very, very different. And then we have other options and other choices. And they may have revealed themselves in that period of time when we were observing. So there are various ways which we teach people to learn to observe. But the kind of influences we have are not just the circumstances around us. They are also very often coming from other people. Someone near us may also be feeling negative, and their negativity reaches us. They may be looking for something to say about you. They may say something negative about you. So they may gossip, and then that makes you feel bad. Your self-image drops. Or you may, on the contrary, actually feel very arrogant and aggressive towards them as a result. But all that is still external to you. And what we have to remember is that the mind is only focusing on the external, whereas actually our feelings are internal. They're not external. So external things are not what make us think and feel the way we do. That's a choice. But the trouble is, if we don't know we have a choice, then we can't choose. And we don't know we have a choice if we don't know how to control our thoughts. So that's the basis of our teaching, is not only to recognize when we're thinking negatively and be able to choose how to think positively, but we need to know exactly how the mind works, why it works that way, and then make that change take place. That's learning about our own minds and our own thinking and what we are creating for ourselves. Because this is what we're doing with every thought. We are creating not only our experience, but we are sharing that experience with other people. We are the creators of our own thoughts. And as we create our own thoughts, we also create our own experiences. We create our words create our actions, and our actions create the way we are living our actual lives. So if we're not in control of that, we're not in control of our lives. And that means that we are at risk of many problems arising because we have no way of knowing what we're doing. Just earlier tonight, I was pouring myself a cup of tea and I splashed some of the hot water on my hand. And of course, I scorched the edge of my hand, not badly, fortunately, but you could say I was being careless. I was not paying attention. And the physical reaction of the body is to produce pain. So pain is an indication that I was scorching myself. If I hadn't felt the pain, I wouldn't have known the water was going on my skin, and I wouldn't have known that I was going to create damage to my skin. So pain has a purpose. When we feel pain, whether it's emotional or whether it's physical, it's telling us something. It's telling us that we're thinking or approaching something in the wrong way. Only when we recognize that do we stop. And then we can make use of that pain, stand back from it and think, where did that come from? Why did I feel that? Whether it's physical or whether it's mental or emotional. Only when we look at it properly and see that we've actually not been looking in the right direction, we've not noticed something, that's what's caused our pain. Similar situation occurs if, for example, you're walking in the countryside and you accidentally walk into a bunch of stinging nettles. The stinging nettles don't intend to hurt you. They're defending themselves, yes, but plants don't actually have intentions as such. So as they hurt you, that's a reminder to you not to walk into nettles again. Most of us learn that pretty fast, and we don't do it a second time, or at least we try not to. We make a good point of avoiding them. So if someone is giving us pain, we're doing something wrong. We're looking at the situation wrongly. If any situation is giving us pain, the same thing applies. We're not noticing what it is. We're looking from the wrong perspective. All of pain is a warning sign. Stop, look, don't cause yourself more harm. The problem with mental health is that people frequently, and let's face it, we're all brought up with don't do this and don't do that. So we're used to being told off. And we're used to diminishing our sense of self as a response. So we often don't pick up on these things. And when we start to feel emotional pain, we may suppress it. We may push it to one side. We may try to ignore it instead of taking note. And that's when it gets bigger and it gets bigger. If you suppress anything, it eventually will burst through, and that's where we get emotional and mental health problems. And where does this relate to our relationships with other people and other religions and other cultures? If you look at it, if each one of us learned how to control our thoughts and to have peaceful thoughts, we could have no more wars. Because wars are purely an expansion of exactly that. They start with one person feeling negative, one person pointing the finger at someone else as being the cause. That other person is never the cause because we always have a choice of how to react. You know, if a child does something to me and hurts me even, I'm not going to get angry with them. I will explain to them that we don't do that because it's not nice. It hurts people. But unfortunately, there are children who've been brought up in a different way who haven't understood that. They don't learn. And unfortunately, they also may be in a situation where they are hurting from things that were done to them. So when they're actually behaving badly towards us, it's not us that's their problem. The problem is inside them. And if we react with negativity towards them, we actually multiply their pain, and therefore they continue and get worse. And the cycle of negativity goes round and round and round and builds up and up and up. So what we learn at the Brahma Kumaris is that actually we have to learn to give love, to give respect, and to care for everyone, regardless of what they do, what they say, what their attitude is. Because the biggest thing that's missing in human life is straightforward love. Unconditional love. Because if you actually give it conditionally, you're not giving anything. You're asking for an exchange. And an exchange is a bargain. It's not a gift. It's the same as forgiveness. It's forgiving. If somebody does something to you that hurts you, forgive it and forget it. Because unless we've forgotten it, we haven't forgiven. It's very, very important that we actually learn to understand the source of what is causing us pain. And the source is our own misunderstanding of ourselves, our environment, other people, and other situations. It might also be that we have a desire for things, a desire for people, for their company, a desire for a position, because our self-respect doesn't exist. We're striving constantly to own stuff, to prove that we're of value. But our value doesn't come from things like that. You only have to look at wealthy people and see how many of them, they marry the same sort of person time and time again, and it ends up disastrously because they're just taking another possession. They haven't understood that actually love is forgiving. And what you give is what you get in return. Literally. So if I give love, I will get love. It always returns because I'm the creator of that emotion. If I give pain, I will get pain back. No doubt about it. So it's absolutely essential that we all learn that positive thinking is the essence of what we have to do to change this world. As Brahmins, we have a saying, when I change, the world changes. That may sound over-dramatic, but it's incredibly true. Back in the 1930s, one man changed his understanding of life. In that change, he created an organization called the Brahma Kumaris. That now consists of nearly 200 centers across the world, in 200 countries across the world, many, many thousands of members. In fact, I think we're in the millions job. But every one of us is following exactly what he learned, and he learned this from a spiritual experience. What we learn is what he learned, and that is that the mind is not this limited thing attached to a body, which has to focus on the material aspects of life. We're much richer than that. We have two hemispheres in our brain, and we have been so busy focused on the left hemisphere in the last few centuries that all we can think of is what is physically outside us. But there's another half of us, another half of our brain, which once we give it energy and we allow it the freedom to actually emerge and develop, then it produces that peace, that stillness, that love and the caring. and all those experiences, and it teaches us that we are actually spiritual beings. And when we've learned that and we've discovered that and we've experienced it, because you learn nothing unless you experience it, that when we've experienced it for ourselves, there's no doubt about it, we know it, and our whole life changes. We start to be in control of what's going on. Not controlling to restrict, but controlling to open up. We are free. We are freed from the misery of getting things wrong. We learn to step back and allow life to flow. We also learn to connect to our true inner selves, the soul. And in so doing, we also find that the Supreme Soul connects to us. We've tuned to the same vibrations. We've raised our consciousness, and our vibrational energy is opening up and picking up the natural love, peace, and wisdom that is our right and is part of our true nature, if only we'll wake up for it. All of this is linked to the fact that we need to become aware of our need to change. Once we have that awareness, we start to pay attention. We look at things. And when we see things and what we look at, we recognize. We learn to understand what we see. We learn that when we understand something, a new reality emerges. And we let that happen. We enable it to happen simply by the change in our attitude. If every one of us in this world was to focus on only ever having positive thoughts, there could be no violence, there could be no crime, there could be no wars in this world. We would have that beautiful, perfect world that God created. That Garden of Eden would be here with us. God made us in his own likeness, and that's a truth. It's the truth in all the religions. It wasn't that we were physically like God, we were spiritually like God, but we've lost sight of that, and we've covered our natural qualities with negativity because we've lost sight of our full selves and only focused on our physical presence. So that's why we teach positive thinking. It's not trivial, it's very fundamental, and it leads us into a wonderful world. And I shall stop there, otherwise there won't be any time left.